actually 80% of the environmental impact of packaging is in the production. So it's all before we even get our hands on it. And we're not looking at that because ultimately it's the way the system is designed. We have to extract all these resources, transport around the world to a manufacturing site, transport back around the world to wherever it's going, some distribution center and out. And that, once we get the packaging, typically it's an incredibly short lifetime. We're ripping it off of our product or we're eating our meal and tossing it. And so the impact of that very short life is very high.
Welcome to Sustainability Leaders. I'm Michael Torrance, Chief Sustainability Officer at BMO. On this show, we will talk with leading sustainability practitioners from the corporate, investor, academic, and NGO communities to explore how this rapidly evolving field of sustainability is impacting global investment, business practices, and our world.
The views expressed here are those of the participants and not those of Bank of Montreal, its affiliates, or subsidiaries.
Hello all, my name is Jayen Veerapen. I'm a senior advisor with the BMO Climate Institute. On this episode of Sustainability Leaders, I have a pleasure to welcome Kayli Smith, CEO and co-founder of Friendlier, a company which, in the words of its other co-founder, Jackie Hanton, was founded with a vision of eliminating single-use packaging. In our discussion today, Kayli and I will focus on Kayli's journey as an entrepreneur in clean technology, doing business while doing good, the sustainability challenge that single-use packaging represents, Friendlier's solutions to this challenge, and its commercialization efforts in the short to medium term. Kayli, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
So, would you please, Kayli, briefly introduce yourself and Friendlier, the company you co-founded in 2019?
I'm the co-founder and CEO at Friendlier. We founded Friendlier in 2019 when I was still a student, but our goal has remained the same, and that's really to make it easy for businesses to transition away from single-use packaging to reusable packaging through our packaging as a service model. So what we do is provide an end-to-end system that food service businesses can implement to eliminate all single-use packaging that they would typically use. We provide durable, trackable containers that we manage, distribute, and collect back once they've been used. We have a centralized washing and logistics infrastructure that we leverage to actually get these products processed and ready to be redistributed. And the cycle continues. We collect a ton of data through that process, which is great for our customers. And today we work with a number of large food service operators across Canada, and more recently our first launch into the US in places like universities, workplace office cafeterias, venues, school lunch programs to help them eliminate waste across their operations.
That's great. I mean, you started your company actually while finishing your studies, while you were still studying. I can only imagine the amount of work this involved, juggling both founding a company and also, end of year exams and all that. So you and your co-founder were named to the Forbes 30 Under 30 2023 North America list in the social impact category. Congratulations on that. I also understand your company is a fair trade workplace. As somebody who quite recently entered the workforce, spending, consuming, how important do you believe it is for consumers of your age group to have some sort of social impact?
Yeah, thank you. That recognition was definitely exciting for us. But what really mattered for us going into this was, wanting to work on something that was meaningful to us and impactful and aligned with our values. And I think that is something that many people in our generation feel. We see it now that we're hiring as well within our own team. A lot of people come to us really for that reason. They want to work somewhere that is mission aligned. Same with consumers. They want to be spending with brands that do align with their values. And I don't think that's something that's going away anytime soon.
You've picked packaging as a field in which to launch a business. Let's unpack that a little bit. No pun intended. So ubiquitous packaging represents a huge market valued at $1 trillion+. Can you help us understand the sustainability challenges associated with such a huge market in general, and then specifically on your market segment, which is food packaging?
Absolutely. Yeah. Packaging, as you said, is such a massive market. It is everywhere. And it, again, is one of those things that's growing as we're ordering more things to our homes. And, I think everyone can feel that as they're, looking at the recycling bin and seeing all of the Amazon boxes or whatnot. And it was certainly something that was prevalent in our lives as well. The challenge with packaging specifically is that the way we've designed it and the way our systems are set up right now is based on this linear single-use model. And so most people don't know, we always think about the end of life with packaging, the recycling, or is it compostable, or, that's where we're focusing. Actually, 80% of the environmental impact of packaging is in the production. So it's all before we even get our hands on it. And we're not looking at that because ultimately it's the way the system is designed. We have to extract all these resources, transport around the world to a manufacturing site, transport back around the world to wherever it's going, some distribution center and out. And so, and that, once we get the packaging, typically it's an incredibly short lifetime. We're ripping it off of our product, or we're eating out of, eating our meal and tossing it. And so the impact of that very short life is very high. And then, of course, you've got the waste to deal with, which is a whole nother issue. We know a lot of what is labeled as recyclable or compostable is not actually getting handled in the way that we might think it is. And so it's certainly a problem that is ripe for disruption, but requires, as I said, more of a system change. And food packaging is something that we felt very close with. Of course, it was prevalent in our own lives. A lot of the waste in our own households is food packaging waste. And it's particularly tricky because it's often contaminated. You've got food and other things mixed in there. Often it's not monomaterial, so you've got different layers of materials, which makes it really tricky to handle later in its afterlife. And so that was a natural place for us to start, just because it is something that we all experience and care about. And it is also particularly tricky for our businesses to solve for.
BMO does an annual business leaders survey, and one of the key takeaways is that it's often not regulatory pressure, but rather customer and investor expectations that are driving change. So I would be interested to hear, in your view, what are the drivers of change in the food packaging market in North America? Is it customer behavior? Is it price? What are the drivers of change in that market, according to you?
There's a number of things. Of course, there is some regulatory tailwinds. There's been some single-use bans. There's been extended producer responsibility, or EPR, which has been rolled out across different states and provinces across North America. So these things help and they get businesses thinking about it. But as you mentioned, there's a number of different things that are pushing them in, driving even more urgency. We hear a lot that packaging is actually the number one complaint for food service businesses because their consumers don't like it. Again, it doesn't align with their values. If they're regular users, they've got multiple meals a week or a day even, that adds up and consumers notice. And so it is often felt from the consumer. We saw the power of the consumer with paper straw, for example, these like huge viral moments that just transformed the industry overnight. And at the same time, we've seen a lot of shifts within the supply chain as well. I think, there's a number of things that have gone on in the world over the past couple years that have just caused turmoil across the supply chains internationally. And all of that has caused a lot of variation in the cost of raw materials and the cost of finished goods with tariffs and things like that.
So you mentioned Sweden, you mentioned Hong Kong earlier. So based on your experience, how does North America compare with the rest of the world on sustainability of packaging life cycle?
Yeah, I mean, North America has a lot of, we're ahead in a lot of ways, strong innovation and capital, but certainly I think in a lot of areas around sustainability, we're a bit behind. And it's true when it comes to packaging specifically and reuse infrastructure and policy alignment. Europe specifically It's typically a couple years ahead of North America when it comes to any sustainability kind of movement or policy. And it's no different with packaging and reuse. And a lot of cultures, single-use packaging isn't as much of a thing. In Sweden, for example, you always typically sit to eat your meal. So it's not even relevant, just culturally. There is some single-use packaging, of course, but not nearly as dominant as it is here in North America.
It looks like there's a lot of potential in North America. So thanks for helping us understand the packaging landscape. Let's turn our attention now to Friendlier. You've done that a little bit earlier, but could you please explain to us in greater detail what Friendlier does? So I'm a student at university going to the food court. I order some food for takeout. I have two options, a normal container or a Friendlier container with its distinctive blue color. Can you walk us through what happens to the container in each case?
Yeah. So the cool thing about our system is that our clients actually switch 100% of their packaging to ours for whatever formats it makes sense. So we actually take away that option, which helps drive greater adoption. And what we find is it actually just becomes part of the culture of the campus wherever we are, which is super cool. So if you were to go somewhere that, you got a single-use package, you're using it for your 30-minute lunch, and then it's immediately going into maybe recycling, maybe landfill, maybe a compost bin. But as I mentioned, oftentimes, regardless of where we put them, they can end up in landfill. So the life of a single-use container is quite straightforward because, again, it's just that super short life before it is landfilled or whatnot. With Friendlier, as a student, if you get our package, it's a little bit different. So the experience is the same when you're checking out. The only difference with our package is that typically we operate on a deposit model, which isn't new. The deposit return systems are popular across different areas of the world, including Canada. We have, beer bottle returns are very common. And so for a student, you would pay a deposit with the cost of your meal or whatever you're purchasing. So typically 50 cents. From there, it's kind of up to you. You can take it, keep it for as long as you need. And then at some point, you would scan the QR code on the package with a smartphone. That tells us it was your package. We allocate that to you. And then you can get your deposit back digitally through that system. So that's all very, hands off for the food service operator. And then you would just return it to a return bin on site. So typically we've got them with all of the garbage, recycling, compost. Now you've got a reuse bin. So it's a very similar experience for you and trying to make it as convenient as possible. And from there, we handle everything behind the scenes. The package would get picked up with the next delivery. It's kind of a, exchange. The food service business is getting new or clean packages, picking up the empties, and then they're getting washed, sanitized, QA checked behind the scenes before getting repackaged, and then they'll go back out into the system.
Help me understand. Yeah. So the 50 cents, so the customer will get that 50 cent back when returning the package. Is that what it is?
Exactly.
Okay. And who ultimately is paying that 50 cent?
If you return it, then nobody. That, it's just a deposit. It's a refundable deposit, but it's just meant to incentivize that return. So it's giving you, another reason to put it in the right bin. We also see, it doesn't have to be your container. Sometimes we have what we call super users on campuses where someone's saving up for their textbooks next term. They find some Friendlier containers that were put in the wrong spot. They're going to help put them in the right bin, and they're going to claim those deposits for them. So it's the same thing we see with bottle return systems as well. It incentivizes that behavior of getting the package into the right spot and getting it returned.
So what is your business model then? How do you make money?
Yeah, good question. So we're completely B2B. So our customers are the food service operators, the universities, the corporate office buildings. We work with contract feeders that work with those types of sites as well. And we basically set it up to be structurally similar to how they were paying for single-use packaging. So it can either be a volume-based fee or a kind of monthly subscription that they're paying us. And that, alleviates any operational changes for them because it is very similar to, how they were paying and how their processes were set up for single-use packaging.
How do we justify actually this additional investment for them? What's the benefit from, engaging with Friendlier as opposed to single-use packaging?
Yeah, so it depends on what they were using before. Many of our customers save money right off the top with us, so it can actually be cheaper than single use. Sometimes we're more expensive. It just depends on what they were using before, but it's very much in line with what they were paying. They're also saving a lot on waste disposal because we're diverting a lot of the material that was ending up in the garbage or recycling or wherever else. And then again, they're getting all the benefits of the reuse system. So they get a lot of data. They get access to dashboards through our portal on, the impact of the system, wastewater, greenhouse gas emissions. And then again, fulfilling kind of that consumer demand around wanting or not wanting single-use packaging as part of their experience.
If I understand you correctly, in the end, they are not necessarily paying more. They have these other benefits, for example, reducing waste, and also they have data which actually has value to them. So they're
Exactly.
not really paying some sort of green premium, but they are having this additional value from adopting a reusable system like Friendlier.
Exactly.
And so what are some of your customers? What type of customers do you have currently?
We have a number, I think it's 35 campuses across Canada and over 200 outlets. And then we've got one in the US, which we just recently announced, our first. So our highest concentration of customers is university and college campuses. So working with their cafeterias across campus, both in their retail, dining, across the board catering. And then we also work with a lot of office cafeteria buildings, K through 12 lunch school programs, some event venues as well, and then some specialty venues like the Toronto Zoo, for example. And then we do have some kind of independent businesses as well, like prepared meal companies that go through a ton of this kind of single-use packaging.
We've talked earlier about how huge a market packaging is. This also translates into millions of food packaging containers moving around. You can't clean a food container remotely or digitally, at least not yet. So your business requires a certain amount of physical infrastructure. How scalable is your business?
It's a great question, and it's one that we've designed for. So our system is built to be modular and hub-based. So we build regional wash and logistics hubs where we can serve dense clusters of customers. We've developed proprietary processes and equipment to be able to do this very cost effectively. So it's very low capital to get going and very quickly. So we can launch a region in a matter of 6 weeks, sometimes less. So we are able to, really expand quickly and cost effectively as we bring on new customers in different areas. And as we scale, this combination of physical infrastructure and software is really what we see as a moat for us as we scale, because again, we're building these systems that are incredibly efficient and capital light compared to what's available in the market. And it's kind of this non-sexy or non-cool piece behind the scenes that allows us to do what we are doing at high volumes and will allow us to scale in the future as well.
Along those lines, what are your growth plans in the near to medium term? Are you looking to new types of businesses as clients, new geographies? So what are your growth plans? And I think you mentioned some expansion in the US. We'd be interested to hear about that also.
Yes, absolutely. So currently we're operational in Canada. We started in Guelph, so we, service most of Southwestern Ontario, GTA, and then we also have Ottawa into Quebec and Vancouver Island, that region. So we have been really focused on kind of not perfecting, but really nailing down the system here before expanding to the US. We just launched with our first client, UC Davis in California. So just setting up our operations there, and we've seen a ton of interest, which is super exciting. So we'll be, announcing more soon. And then we're also launching in Nova Scotia as well on the east coast of Canada. So this system is very applicable to many things. Food packaging is very broad in itself. There's many other kind of types of venues we can go to, and we're doing some early work with retail applications like Farm Boy, for example, in Ontario, if you're familiar with the retailer. But again, the system is really applicable to any types of packaging. So as we, continue to scale and grow, we can diversify into different markets because again, our focus is really on the supply chain piece, the software and the infrastructure that allows us to reuse packaging at scale. And that's really what we're good at.
Earlier in 2025, you closed a $4.5 million Canadian all equity round. In total, you've raised $13 million. That's a great vote of confidence for your business. Can you share with us what your investors' investment thesis is?
Our investors, we have a great mixture of them. Most of them are just general tech type investors. And then we have one kind of impact focused investor as well. So it's great to see that diversity as well, that, we're building a solid and profitable business while also, we have this bonus of the sustainability piece built in as well. But our investors really believe that reuse is inevitable. We're going to see this transition to a more circular system, but only if our solutions can work operationally and economically at scale. And that's really where Friendlier is that missing piece, that infrastructure and software to enable the circular systems at scale without having to overhaul our operations in the way that the world works today.
I'm glad to hear, that you have a solid business on top of that. So the funds that you've raised so far, what are the purpose? What are you going to use these funds for? And are you already anticipating any new capital requirements going forward?
So this recent round we did, it was about a year ago now, but we used that really to expand into some new regions. And we also invested a lot into automation and our processes to drive up our unit economics and allow us to be in a position to be able to scale rapidly in a really sustainable way. So again, that was kind of doing the groundwork for some of this expansion that's now to come. But we will be kicking off another round soon here, and that will really be to fuel that expansion into the US. So we've started with our first kind of footprint in California, but we will be raising more funds to help us really fuel that fire and continue expanding across the US.
You will be happy to hear that BMO has a good presence in California. And so, that's interesting. That's also one of the regions of focus for you. It's been an absolute pleasure learning more about your journey and Friendlier's journey, Kayli. Anything else you want to add?
I would just add that sustainability is sometimes thought of as like nice to have that isn't necessarily scalable or urgent, but sustainability doesn't fail because people don't care. This is a real want and need. It fails when we're trying to change the way things work around sustainability and build solutions that don't meet the customer where they're at or meet, the systems where they're at. And so I think that's really key in scaling some of these climate-focused solutions is focusing on building to fit in to what exists today and, change as little as possible. And that will allow you to, scale a lot more quickly and a lot more efficiently as well.
Well, thank you for these insightful comments and sharing your experience with us, Kayli. We look forward to continuing to follow Friendlier's journey going forward. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to Sustainability Leaders. This podcast is presented by BMO. You can find our show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast player. Press the follow button if you want to get notified when new episodes are published. We value your input, so please leave a rating, review, and any feedback that you might have, or visit us at bmo.com/sustainability leaders. Our show and resources are produced with support from BMO's marketing team and Puddle Creative. Until next time, thanks for listening and have a great week.
For BMO disclosures, please visit bmocm.com/podcast/disclaimer